I mean, why can't you have all these rules and laws? Why can't you just say she exercised poor judgment, even if you don't know if she broke the law? This is your guidance. It was not followed.
Yeah. Well, Ed, the
advocates who've worked tirelessly for equality for decades. 20 years ago, this was a... Now, I would be pleased to talk more about this important matter, but I know there have been questions about my emails, so I want to address that directly, and then I will take a few questions from you. There are 4 things I want the public to know. First,
official is not only using a private email account, but is controlling their own, and controlling their own server, that there really is no independent way to verify that they have turned over all of the emails that involve official business.
Well, all I can say is that the guidelines that we have laid out are consistent with the law that the president signed into law at the end of last year.
It has taken several years of presidential legal pressures from the Judicial Watch to begin exposing Hillary Clinton's email scandal. Last week, for example, we reported that we could have known about her email games 2 years ago had the State Department not withheld a key email responsive to a Judicial Watch Freedom of Information Act. Now, what's going on basically is that the Obama administration has actually, what they did is they try to suppress all type of information for those emails, and basically Obama's State Department hid key Clinton Benghazi email from the Judicial Watch. That's what really happened. And if it says here, Judicial Watch announces today that it has filed, this has been a couple of years ago, that the State Department of Defense in its continuing effort to access to records concerning what occurred in the days immediately before, during, and after the deadly terrorist attack on the consulate in Benghazi. So obviously there's a cover-up here. We all know that. And I just don't understand how these people even want to trust Hillary Clinton as a president. I mean, we trust her. Trust what? This is a lawsuit. This is a cover-up, especially here. Emails. Look what's going on. Look, just for yourself. Go to Judicial Watch versus the state. File number of June 21st, 2013, and there's a huge cover-up here. So, yeah, it's taking years and years of legal pressure. But but in summary, it describes that the department received the documents in June 2015 from the members of former Secretary Clinton's senior staff and did not withhold it until that time. So there's a pretty big discrepancy in the dates. Obviously there's some sort of confusion going on here. And like I said, again, this is a federal cover-up. And Benghazi lies all over again. Welcome to Hillary Clinton's world. You guys want to vote for her? Go vote for her. A disaster. Not to be trusted.
And this was raised by Mike, is whether or not she was in compliance with the Federal Records Act. And again, it requires that personal email that was related to official government work be properly turned over to, preserved, and maintained by the State Department. And in this case, again, if Secretary Clinton's team did what they said they did, then they would be in compliance with the Federal Records Act.
Okay, and specifically, did the White House know that Secretary Clinton had her own server?
I don't know the answer to that. As I mentioned earlier, I think the extent of knowledge about Secretary Clinton's email was her email address. And she used that email address that, as we all now know, was not at state.gov.
That was all of the deference, Kevin.
But that she was emailing White House officials. That's something that I acknowledged from the beginning, and it shouldn't be a particular surprise that the Secretary of State is emailing senior White House officials. Right. The expectation at the White House, as was the case for every other cabinet agency, is that she and her team are in compliance with the Federal Records Act.
So you're acknowledging for 4 years she did not use a State Department account, and to Major's question, every senior official here at the White House just deferred and said, that's okay.
Every senior official here at the White House was interested in making sure that Secretary Clinton and every other employee in the Obama administration was acting in compliance and consistent with the Federal Records Act. And based on the fact that Secretary Clinton's team has turned over those emails, forwarded them to the State Department so they could be properly preserved and maintained, is consistent with the Federal Records Act. And we know that those records, hundreds of them, have already been used to respond to a congressional inquiry.
A couple other quick ones that you said. It's not just Secretary Clinton, it's throughout the government. It's been known and confirmed on Capitol Hill that former EPA Chief Lisa Jackson had a whole nother account that she was using, used the name Richard Windsor, to talk to officials and talk to outside groups. Did anyone here at the White House ever challenge that? Was Lisa Jackson ever held accountable, admonished in any way?
But that has nothing to do with the Federal Records Act because
It has to do with maintaining a different email account under a different name for official business.
But the official business is properly maintained with the EPA at that agency as it's supposed to be.
Under Richard Windsor, it was properly maintained.
Ed, it was preserved at the Department of
Under another name.
Of the EPA.
Under another
So
name.
that individuals, like individuals in Congress, could have access to that information based on legitimate inquiries. That is entirely consistent with the Federal Records Act.
Okay, last on this, in cooperating with Congress, the Benghazi terror attacks were in 2012, and shortly thereafter, as we all know, Republicans started asking for documents. Now we learn that
Seven different committees.
Seven different, in fact, yes.
Yes.
And now you mentioned
all of which found not a single instance of wrongdoing by the
and
administration.
all of which did not.
So we're
hold on a
starting.
second. All
So we're
of which
starting
never
with
got
the
emails
eighth,
from
so
Secretary
we're starting
Clinton,
with the eighth committee.
Okay.
Who's going to take a look at this? So
Yeah.
they've received now hundreds of pages of documents. I have not seen Chairman Gowdy or anyone else in that committee who's reviewed those emails. I have not. Indicate that they provide any additional evidence or any additional insight.
Fair
now,
question for him.
they'll
We'll have to see what he presents.
They'll have an opportunity.
That's
to,
not my
to
question.
make
My question
their
is,
case.
you just said there were 7 committees.
That's correct.
That looked at Benghazi before
None of
Trey
whom
Gowdy.
found any evidence of wrongdoing.
But hang on. Will you acknowledge none of those 7 committees got any emails from Hillary Clinton? She turned over these emails to Trey Gowdy, we hear 2 weeks ago. So you've stood there, Jay Carney stood there for years, saying 7 committees are investigating this, they're not finding anything. Will you now at least acknowledge those 7 committees did not get any email from Secretary Clinton?
No, what I will say is that those 7 committees concluded that no wrongdoing was done by anybody in the administration, no wrongdoing was committed by anybody in the
And the
Department of
ARV
Defense, and
the
I'm
ARV did
confident
not
that
get
the
emails from
evidence
her, right?
that I'm confident that the evidence that is uncovered and reviewed by this select committee will have evidence that indicates the same thing. We'll see if they arrive at the same conclusion.
Last thing on Netanyahu's speech yesterday. One of the things moving forward substantively.
All set? Good afternoon. I want to thank the United Nations for hosting today's events and putting the challenge of gender equality front and center on the international agenda. I'm especially pleased to have so many leaders here from the private sector standing shoulder to shoulder with advocates who've worked tirelessly for equality for decades. 20 years ago, this was a... Now, I would be pleased to talk more about this important matter, but I know there have been questions about my emails, so I want to address that directly, and then I will take a few questions from you. There are 4 things I want the public to know. First, when I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of 2. Looking back, it would have been better if I'd simply used a second email account and carried a second phone, but at the time, this didn't seem like an issue. Second, the vast majority of my work emails went to government employees at their government addresses, which meant they were captured and preserved immediately on the system at the State Department. Third, after I left office, the State Department asked former secretaries of state for our assistance in providing copies of work-related emails from our personal accounts. I responded right away and provided all my emails that could possibly be work-related, which totaled roughly 55,000 printed pages, even though I knew that the State Department already had the vast majority of them. We went through a thorough process to identify all of my work-related emails and deliver them to the State Department. At the end, I chose not to keep my private, personal emails, emails about planning Chelsea's wedding or my mother's funeral arrangements, condolence notes to friends, as well as yoga routines, family vacations, the other things you typically find in inboxes. No one wants their personal emails made public, and I think most people understand that and respect that privacy. Fourth, I took the unprecedented step of asking that the State Department make all my work-related emails public for everyone to see. I am very proud of the work that I and my colleagues and our public servants at the Department did during my 4 years as Secretary of State. And I look forward to people being able to see that for themselves. Again, looking back, it would have been better for me to use 2 separate phones and 2 email accounts. I thought using one device would be simpler, and obviously it hasn't worked out that way. Now I'm happy to take a few questions.
Secretary Clinton,
Just a minute. No, I mean, Nick is calling on people.
Sorry. Madam Secretary, Kahraman Hali Salik with Turkish Television. On behalf of the UN Correspondents Association, thank you very much for your remarks, and it's wonderful to see you here again. Madam Secretary, why did you opt out not using 2 devices at the time? Obviously, if this didn't come out, you wouldn't probably wouldn't become an issue. And my second follow-up question is, if you were a man today, would all this fuss being made be made? Thank you.
Well, I will leave that to others to answer. But as I said, I saw it as a matter of convenience, and it was allowed. Others had done it. According to the State Department, which recently said Secretary Kerry was the first Secretary of State to rely primarily on a state.gov email account. And when I got there, I wanted to just use one device for both personal and work emails instead of 2. It was allowed, and as I said, it was for convenience, and it was my practice to communicate with State Department and other government officials on their .gov accounts. So those emails would be automatically saved in the State Department system to meet record-keeping requirements, and that indeed is what happened. And I heard just a little while ago the State Department announced they would begin to post some of my emails, which I'm very glad to hear because I want it all out there.
Madam Secretary, can you...
Andrea, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Can you explain how you decided which of the personal emails to get rid of, how you got rid of them and when, and how you'll respond to questions about you being the arbiter of what you release? And secondly, could you answer the questions that have been raised about foreign contributions from Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia that abuse women or permit violence against women to the Family Foundation, and whether that disturbs you as you are rightly celebrating 20 years of leadership on this issue?
Well, those are 2 very different questions. Let me see if I can take them in order. And I'll give you some of the background. In going through the emails, there were over 60,000 in total sent and received. About half were work-related and went to the State Department, and about half were personal that were not in any way related to my work. I had no reason to save them, but that was my decision because the federal guidelines are clear and the State Department request was clear. For any government employee, it is that government employee's responsibility to determine what's personal and what's work-related. I am very confident of the process that we conducted and the emails that were produced. And I feel like once the American public begins to see the emails, they will have an unprecedented insight into a high government official's daily communications, which I think will be quite interesting. And with respect to the foundation, I am very proud of the work the foundation does. I'm very proud of the hundreds of thousands of people who support the work of the foundation and the results that have been achieved for people here at home and around the world. I think that we are very clear about where we stand, certainly where I stand on all of these issues. There can't be any mistake about my passion concerning women's rights here at home and around the world. So I think that people who want to support the foundation know full well what it is we stand for and what we're working on. Hi, right here.
Secretary Clinton.
She's sort of squashed, so we got to.
Hi, Secretary. I was wondering if you think that you made a mistake in either in exclusively using your private email or in the response to the controversy around it, and if so, what have you learned from that?
Well, I have to tell you that, as I said in my remarks, looking back, it would have been probably, smarter to have used two devices, but I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department. And I have to add, even if I'd had two devices, which is obviously permitted, many people do that, you would still have to put the responsibility where it belongs, which is on the official. So I did it for convenience, and I now, looking back, think that it might have been smarter to have those two devices from the very beginning.
Secretary Clinton.
Yeah.
Did you or any of your aides delete any government-related emails from your personal account? And what lengths are you willing to go to prove that you didn't? Some people, including supporters of yours, have suggested having an independent arbiter look at your server, for instance.
We did not. In fact, my direction to conduct the thorough investigation was to err on the side of providing anything that could be possibly viewed as work-related. That doesn't mean they will be by the State Department once the State Department goes through them, but out of an abundance of caution and care, we wanted to send that message unequivocally. That is the responsibility of the individual, and I have fulfilled that responsibility, and I have no doubt that we've done exactly what we should have done. When the search was conducted, we were asking that any email be identified and preserved that could potentially be federal records. And that's exactly what we did, and we went, as I said, beyond that. And the process produced over 30,000, work emails. And I think that we have more than met the request from the State Department. The server contains personal communications from my husband and me, and I believe I have met all of my responsibilities, and the server will remain private, and I think that the State Department will be able, over time, to release all of the records.
All in a landslide, right? And we're going to win the whole thing. We're going to beat her in a landslide, all right? We're going to beat her. So one of my political guys said to me like 2 weeks ago, said, we're going to...
Thank you very much, Chaplain. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Secretary Panetta, Ambassador Rice, Secretary Powell and Mrs. Powell, family members of the 4 patriots and heroes we bring home, members of the State Department family, ladies and gentlemen, today we bring home 4 Americans who gave their lives for our country and our values. To the families of our fallen colleagues, I offer our most heartfelt condolences and deepest gratitude. Sean Smith joined the State Department after 6 years in the Air Force.
Nobody respects women more than I do, I will tell you that. And women are looking for security in our country, and they know I'm going to do the best job. Look at Hillary with her call. Remember the ad? Who's going to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, when they called her on Benghazi, she was sleeping, folks. She was sleeping. Okay? She was sleeping. Who's going to be awake? She wasn't awake. So all of a sudden, the polls start showing great, and we've been doing amazing. But then you had a thing called Paris, where Paris, 130 people killed, hundreds of people laying in the hospital.